sometimes when you're a little younger that there's certain moments that seem like it's the be all end all. Like
Absolutely.
This is either going to happen or it's not.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You're going to have more moments like that. You're going to have more opportunities. So I think not putting too much pressure on yourself in certain, especially when you're younger, there's a lot of ways to get to your destination.
Hello and welcome back to the Next Act podcast. I'm your host, Keaton Hall. Today's podcast is unofficially brought to you by Fall in the Midwest. It's very hard to beat the trees turning colors, the smell of football in the air, and it officially becoming hoodie and shorts season. Joining me today is someone who is toward the top of my list of favorite and most impactful people in my life. I've had the privilege of being coached by him and maintaining a great relationship with him since my junior year of high school. He's been a winner since his prep days and carried those winning principles and traditions with him in his professional career as a state champion coach and, most importantly, as a family man and member of the Mid-Michigan community. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Coach Tom Lewis. Coach, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, thanks, Keaton, for having me. It's an honor to be on here.
Definitely very happy it worked out while I was back home to come do it in person. It's always fun to do in-person interviews for me because you get to actually have a conversation in kind of like face-to-face as opposed to the online stuff that I typically have to do with some of my guests. But
no, I think face-to-face, we lost that for a while, and I think it's, we can appreciate it a little bit more now, so it's great seeing you.
Absolutely. So don't want to delay any longer getting to your first act, but tell me about your athletic career in high school, and then did you go on to play any athletics after that?
I didn't. I played I played all sports growing up, and then in high school, definitely basketball was my favorite. Broke my leg going into high school. Couldn't play football, but I always played golf as a kid, so I played golf. Kind of got good at that and just kept doing that. Yeah. So that gave me some extra time to play hoops. After my high school career, I had college opportunities, but I always saw myself going to Michigan State. So I had no idea about the recruiting process then.
Right.
Had lots of coaches talking to me and had opportunities to go play, but I really want to go to Michigan State, and get a Big Ten education, and actually tried out as a walk-on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for Michigan State. Made it down to the nitty-gritty, but they took a guy that was 6'7", 6'8", so
it's tough to compete with that.
That's all good. I have no regrets about that.
That's awesome. So played all sports growing up. Pretty typical for kids in kind of that era. Unfortunately, not as much today. But how much of your identity did you feel was kind of tied to being a basketball or just all-around athlete?
Yeah, I think growing up, I'm the youngest of 6 kids. I got 3 older brothers, 2 older sisters, and we were always playing something. And that's, it does seem weird now to talk about, but we'd get up in the morning and, grab a baseball and
just right at it.
Grab a wiffle ball, grab a basketball, grab a football, and that's all we did. So grew up competing. My parents were both competitive, and they were athletes too. So it was just always in me to be around sports, and I love that, and that's kind of how I raised my kids. I'd never been a dad before.
Yep.
So I said, well, this is how we did it. So I just put them in competitive situations, how I was, and that's just kind of the family business.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely shows with, ever since I've known you, it's always been going to coach one thing or either Riley or Kenzie going to some sort of tournament or anything like that. So that definitely makes sense. What was your favorite part about being an athlete?
I just think the team concept and the people you meet, in high school, I played for my future father-in-law. I didn't know it then, but
that's awesome.
I did not coach I did not date the coach's daughter. We didn't start dating until college, but he was a real mentor for me, in those years. And my teammates to this day, are some of my best friends. And I think the relationships you build in team sports are, they're lifelong, and they're just irreplaceable.
Absolutely. No, I can definitely attest to that. Anyone who has played a team sport and really kind of grinded together kind of through a season and all the off-season stuff, and it's just a different type of bond that you build. I remember you saying to me and Riley and Keenan and the rest of our team kind of the summer before senior year, like, you guys got to build a kind of a sweat equity bond together. And that's just something that's really hard to break. And it's just feeds into the entire season when you guys are playing together, because you want to play for each other because you just have such a strong bond like that.
Yeah, and as a coach, you can really see that, whether you have something special or you have something to work on there. And sometimes, you see it at every level from professional down. You might have a ton of talent, but if you don't have that bond, if it's not authentic, it makes everything tough. You got to have a team that trusts each other, that loves each other, trusts a coach got to trust the players, and that's harder to put together than people think. But when you have it, it's definitely a difference maker.
Definitely turned into something special. So what was one of your favorite memories from kind of your first act as an athlete?
I had a special senior year where we were undefeated. I grew up in Perry, small town. They hadn't won a lot, and in those days, our league, we had Williamston, DeWitt, Hazlitt in our league, and Williamston was a powerhouse. DeWitt was too, and we were able to go undefeated in the regular season, which really pains me. And then we got upset in the district final by DeWitt, who we had beaten twice, in the regular season. But they were really good. I think they had 3 losses, two to us and 1 to Williamston, who was ranked, very highly. But I didn't get over that.
Yeah.
Never got over that loss.
That's tough.
And my friends that I played with on the team, we never got over it. And we had such a successful summer and beat some of the top Class A teams, around the state. We were down at Michigan. Chris Webber was in our way.
Oh, my word.
At that time, that would have been pretty tough. But we felt like our story got cut short in a big way. So it was one of my best times with those guys. I still see them, love them, but that was really unfinished business, and that was fuel to my coaching fire the rest of my career. There's no doubt.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And we'll touch on the unfinished business a little bit later, but that definitely makes sense. As a player, what were some of the kind of key distinguishing factors that you tried to use and implement into yourself as your identity? So whether it be you worked harder than everybody else or you were more competitive, what was one of those characteristics that you tried to use like that?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I was just another guy, and we didn't have a freshman team, and so my freshman year I was on the JV, but I sat the bench the whole year. And I didn't really deserve to play. I wasn't anything special. So that off season, I just said this is never gonna happen again, and kind of went to work. I didn't have a left hand, got a left hand. I started growing up a little bit, and I just worked really hard. And I literally went in the gym when everybody else was away on a Saturday night or whenever it was, swept the floor and worked out. And I just didn't want to be in that position ever again. Yeah. So my playing style was just, I was a guard, I could shoot, whatever, but I tried to I just tried to make winning plays. Really did. We had a really good team. I had great guys around me. So we had, guys that who knew who was going to be the leading scorer on any given night. So I loved giving assists as much as I liked scoring. I loved to rebound. I like to be physical. So I just try to do a little bit of everything. And it wasn't by design. I just think it was probably from getting beat up by my big brothers. Yeah. I would play against them when they were grown men when I was a little kid, and you just try to do anything you could to affect the game. Yeah. So that's probably what turned me into the player I was.
Yeah. Makes you grow up real quick when you had to go up against 3 older brothers like that.
It does.
For sure.
It does.
I love that. So now we kind of set the stage with your first act of being an athlete. It's going to be a little bit shorter than some others, just because there's a lot in your next acts that I really want to get into. So you decided not to go play athletics in college, go to Michigan State. After that kind of first act of being a student athlete ended, what kind of emotions came with knowing that part of your life had closed? Was it hard, or were you kind of ready to move on?
Well, it was, It was hard. I remember going back to the first game, and I still had friends on that team.
Mm-hmm.
They were, some of them were juniors, and seeing those guys play, and we were still so bitter about that loss. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
It sounds weird now being a high school loss that
Uh-huh.
it's still stuck with me.
But kind of in that moment, like as a high schooler, that's like
It's
life or
tough.
death.
It's
Yeah.
tough, and you play, Michigan State, you're playing pickup games, and you're playing in the IM, and you still get, I still played and had some juice, but it was definitely different.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely different. The weird thing for me was my freshman year of college, my father-in-law, now father-in-law, but my varsity coach asked if they needed a middle school coach. A 7th grade basketball coach. So I'm a freshman, and I was young. I mean, I graduated when I was 17, so
Uh-huh.
I just turned 18, and they needed a coach. I'm like, I don't know how to coach, And
Yeah.
he goes, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. So my freshman year of basketball I was a head coach,
Oh my word.
and or my freshman year of college, and it was that was an eye opener, and that kept me around the game.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I did that for a few years. I was a varsity assistant the 4th year with my father-in-law, and so I was around the game.
Mm-hmm.
But not playing was, it was tough for a while. But kind of being busy coaching and going to school and having a job and doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was kind of over it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
You know.
So that kind of segues into the next question of with that structure, did you feel the need to kind of replace that structure right away, or was it kind of, it sounds like it was kind of replaced in and of itself with the coaching?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I worked all through college, carried a full load. I was so busy, I didn't really know any different.
Mm-hmm.
To get to go play hoop was kind of a treat at that point. We had some free time.
Yeah.
There were great games around East Lansing, and so that was more of a treat. And then we played, I probably played some men's leagues for a couple of years, and saw old players that I played against. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just more of an outlet of not being in the grind of school and work and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So what was the kind of biggest adjustment you had to make after you retired, and then you were no longer spending that much time, all the hours going into work on your game? Like, what was one of the biggest adjustments you had to kind of make in that new phase of life as you kind of went forward into it?
Just like in college and everything, or
Yeah. After you were done playing and didn't have that structure, and you didn't know, like, okay, I got to go work out. What was the biggest adjustment there?
Yeah, I think it was looking for juice.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, athletes always talk about looking for some juice.
Yep.
So, I tried to, I didn't know, I really was a young coach, but, by my 3rd year, we won a championship, the middle school, we went undefeated. It was a big deal.
That's awesome.
And I felt some juice with that.
Mm-hmm.
I felt some competitive juice with sports. I think that's a weird transition, that time of your life, when you have to make the decision of, hey, we're getting ready to get a real job and do all that.
Yep.
There's not a lot of time for that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, you got to find some things to replace that juice. And for me, luckily, I think I coached 3 years of middle school and then a varsity assistant for 4 years. That got me through college. And then after college, I started working, and then I turned all that juice into work.
Yeah.
I was looking for juice from my job.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, that was probably a real blessing.
Yeah, for sure. That is absolutely one of the biggest things I know from talking with other kind of athletes as they kind of transition out of that competitiveness that's already there for them. Like, because that feeling, that adrenaline you get when you're in the competition and you're trying to go hard and go after a certain goal, like that's hard to replicate. So trying to find that in your next acts and after that's over is always tough. But it's good that you're able to find that with coaching right away and then being able to transfer that into your profession as well.
Yeah, my profession was really competitive, and there was no choice. I had to work hard to succeed. So
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't a lot of time to think about anything else. But then you get into I was a big Michigan State fan.
Mm-hmm.
You get to you go to games, you get season tickets, and you kind of go to some of those events, and you start tailgating, and you get to the other side of it, and like, oh, this part being a fan is
pretty fun.
too. So,
Absolutely.
And from there, it just kind of snowballed into worked a ton, but then at some point, Heather and I were married 5 years before we had Riley, so by that time, then you have a kid, and it's kind of another stage too
Mm-hmm.
that you're into. So
For sure.
yeah, I think the coaching helped kind of salve the wound of the competitive juices, and then from there you just you pour yourself into something, and I guess I did work early in my career.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. In terms of kind of touching back on the adjustment aspect, for me, one of the biggest things that I had to adjust to after I was done playing was when I did go back to play basketball. I had these expectations I had for myself of how I was going to play, and when I didn't meet them, it was really frustrating. Same thing with like workouts in general, with like cardio and then strength. Like, you're used to putting all of your time and energy into getting really, really good at those things, and after you're not, it's naturally going to have a little bit of a drop off. So was that a tough adjustment you had to make as like a IM player too?
Yeah, I mean, when right after college, I was working, Okemos, East Lansing area. Heather got a job for 1 year in Byron, not too far away, but then she got a job in Williamston. And so we moved to Williamston. She kind of always believed, and her parents are educators, and said, live in the district where you're at.
Yeah.
So I came to Williamston and actually met a group of guys, and they're like, hey, we play up at the middle school on whatever night. So I was like, okay, I'll stop up. And actually that was a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back, I can't believe all the dads of players that I was playing against at that point.
That's awesome.
I didn't know them.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody really.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun, but like when you start playing, and there were it was old man basketball where some guys are up there, don't have a clue, they're terrible, but there were some dogs that could play like a hoop.
Mm-hmm.
And a fisherman can sense another fisherman, you know what
Yep.
I mean? So we'd always be guarding each other, all of this, and so there were some guys that could play and had played in college, and so that was fun for me. You know what I mean? I was still in my work life, and that was fun, but oh man, just being out of shape. So that actually was like an eye opener. So man, I kind of got myself back into shape a little bit, to play a little bit, and did that for some years, and that was fun. But even then, when you're older, like playing, like even now I play golf with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I play some of those kids that I coached in middle school. So they were only about 5 or 6 years different than me.
Yep.
I'm playing golf with one of them tomorrow.
That's awesome.
I was the best man in one of their weddings.
That's awesome.
Those guys, like, to me, golf, I didn't get to play in college very much because I was so busy. Golf definitely fills a competitive space for me.
Yeah.
There is no doubt.
Yeah.
I really enjoy going out and playing, play for a little money, play a little game here and there.
Of course.
That really helps too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because you see so many athletes kind of play golf on the side or pick it up on the side, and I think it's because, one, there is that competitive aspect there that everybody's kind of chasing after, and two, like, that's something you can play well into however old you get, and still it's more of a technique thing, so you're able to still play throughout, and it's not really a timetable on it.
Yeah.
And
we actually one of my best friends, I'm playing with him tomorrow too. He played football at Michigan, Tate Shansky, and so he got me into, like, when those guys were done playing football, like he played on their national championship team and played with Brady and those guys, and they used to get together and have a tennis tournament. Sometimes it'd be in Chicago, sometimes it'd be here. So I got invited to play in that. Oh, it was, talk about juice, and you got all former athletes. And so one of those guys we still play golf with, Ty Streets, he's a gas, and but that was all about the juice. I mean, we're out there
100%.
just playing tennis. Like,
Yeah.
we're not great, but it meant something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it meant something.
Absolutely.
So really enjoyed that. But I think once you're an athlete, it turns into anything. I mean, now I'm an old man. I'm not going to be out shooting hoop or whatever. But when I was shooting my players, I'm like, I always asked them, who's the second best shooter in the gym? Because I know who's
that.
number one.
I remember that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that competitive, those juices, the kind of the need for those never leave.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Do you think, since you were able to kind of stay around the game and have an automatic kind of outlet for that competitive juice right after you got done playing, do you think that helped more than if you would have kind of stepped away from the game for a few years and then came back to it? Because I know a lot of people, they have bad experiences with their sport. Like, they grew up loving it, but then a bad coach or a bad experience kind of ruins it, and they kind of disassociate themselves from it. But do you think that staying with it is something that helped you a lot?
Yeah, I think that, I think that was a great bridge for me, because I had a lot of people around me at that point that were kind of disappointed in me that I didn't go play college basketball. And I was just like, I just need to go to school and, kind of get on with it. I kind of had made peace with that.
Yeah.
So I think getting into the game and coaching, and then I did for those 4 years, but then after that, I was out of the game for like a decade. I just was a fan, and I didn't necessarily miss it.
Yeah.
And really having Riley, having kids, took him to an AAU tryout and kind of coached him when he was a little toddler there a little bit in the Red Cedar Rec, but took him to a AAU tryout, and they, met an old friend of mine that I played basketball with, Monty Miles, who ran triple threat.
Yep.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, so we got to rekindle our relationship. That's really what got me back into coaching.
Yeah.
But I was away for it for almost a decade.
Wow. Okay.
But I was working and raising my kids and all that stuff. So you're pretty busy at that point.
For sure.
So I'm glad I got brought back to the game, because I could have gone on and that could have been it.
Yeah, for sure. That's I love that. I didn't know that was initially how you kind of got back into coaching, because I knew you and Monty had been kind of the leaders of triple threat when I was in high school and then kind of middle school. But that's a cool way to kind of get back into it.
Yeah, that was Monty's baby, and he was a senior when I was a sophomore playing, so we played together a year, and we've been friends forever, still are, and I see him. I love that, but that really was the impetus to get me back in. Like, you coach a little, youth stuff around here, which is important.
Right, absolutely.
Youth programs need that and that, but once we got in the AU circuit,
it's just different.
It's different. It's different. So that was fun. You know what I mean? And it was a really good tool to kind of get me back. Like, okay, your kids think they're good, then they go to, they're playing against, Cassius and Josh Jackson, they're the same age, and get torn up when they're in 6th grade, and you're like, you're not that good, bud. You know what I mean?
So it's real.
Let's figure this out.
Yep.
And that stoked a fire in me, and it stoked a fire in my kids. So that was really important, and that's what really got me back into the game.
That's awesome. Love that. Yeah, there's on the AAU circuit, there's a lot of reality checks from just athletes.
Yeah.
I remember 2 of the guys that I played against that were crazy. We played against Josh Jackson in one of the Brawl for the Ball tournaments my senior year with Grand Rapids Storm, and then
he always played up a year once he was in high school.
Yep. It was like the Sunday, so it was kind of the championship bracket day, and we had made it to the top bracket, but one of our games was 8 a.m. So we were there, our whole team's practicing, like getting warmed up 45 minutes, 60 minutes before. And then the team, like, we knew we were playing One Nation, and then they just weren't showing up. And then, like, 10 minutes before the game, they roll in, kind of stretch a little bit, and they're like, all right, we're ready to go. And then it was, we were within 10 points at one point in the second half, but then it's just one of those situations that's different. Like, there's a reason why so many D1 athletes are D1 athletes.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Like, with Riley's group that we had in AU, we were always chasing the family. We'd always hit the family at some point. And that was Cassius, and Josh Jackson would roll around, and then Miles Bridges played, same year. Like, It's crazy. I got to see all those guys grow up.
That's
like
awesome.
Miles used to look like Charles Barkley. Like he was a power forward.
Yeah.
But the kid could jump out of the gym even when he had a bigger frame. And then, he's playing in the NBA. But those other guys, it was. But we always narrow the gap. We get a win once in a while. It meant a lot. But I kind of used. I mean, there was a point where my parents, my mom came to me at one point, and I know Heather's parents were like, "What are you doing to these kids?" You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing to these kids?
Why are you playing them against like this?
And I said, listen, I got a plan. You know what I mean? Like, I got a plan. And I think that came to fruition for Rouse in high school. And some of those, some of the guys I had, the Brandon Allens and some of those guys that I coached, Evan Conza, they were all great athletes. You know what I mean? And they were so fun to coach. And that's going back to that, like, team chemistry. Like, we had a weird AU team because we had guys that liked each other.
Yeah.
That liked each other.
Yeah,
and it was so much fun.
That's unique.
We were outmatched when we got to big tournaments. We'd get down to the quarters and semis, but that prepped them for a lot of stuff. And I tried to use that kind of scheduling when I became a high school coach. Like, I wanted to play anybody.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And make sure you get a reality check in the summer of how good you are and all that good stuff. So, yeah, it all kind of intertwined together.
For sure. No, I love that. So kind of the last question about the transition period between your kind of first acts and then your next acts. Looking back, was there any lesson you learned or characteristic you developed from being a basketball player and just an athlete in general that helped you deal with the uncertainty of kind of life going after, since there's not really an instruction manual on how to navigate your 20s, 30s going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would have done as a kid without sports. You know what I mean? And like, this is from a big family, and that taught me a ton. And my parents are great, and they're hardworking. And then when you're an athlete, like, you just want to compete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I tried to turn everything. I kind of still do. You turn everything into a competition. I'm a simple-minded guy. You know what I mean? Like, everything's a competition. So I just used that in the business world and tried to be the best version of myself. Try to have a big chip on my shoulder, and kind of play. Just say, this is a competition. You know what I mean? Like, there's other people that are trying to do what you're doing and everything like that. And I just think sports it's invaluable that way. And also, I think losing teaches you some things. Like, I hate to lose. I remember losses way more. I used to remember. I'll say that now. I've kind of slayed that demon now. But I used to obsess about losses way too much.
Yeah.
But you take L's in life. I mean, life is a roller coaster. So having to deal with that, and you do your whole life. So I think athletics is just, it's invaluable. You know what I mean? It was for me, at least, and I think it is for my family.
Yeah, for sure. I love the being able to recognize certain traits that you had developed and then realize, hey, like, this is not confined to just athletics. This is something I can use going forward and help me kind of navigate situations that I'm not sure what to do in.
Yeah, I think now it's so much more, Heather's into the, the kind of the mental health and the mindset and, the manifestation of things. I think a lot of people were doing that before you recognize it, but for me, it was just a mindset. Whatever I was doing, I just turned it into a competition. So I think that you just have to do that. But sometimes you lose that edge, and you got to get it back.
Yeah, without a doubt. Okay, so we've covered your first act, kind of covered the transition in between of kind of what to do next. Now, kind of going into your next act, over the years, you've progressed significantly in your professional career, had a very decorated coaching career, and also been a leader in your family life, and then also a member of the Williamston community for a really long time. What does balance mean to you, and how has that kind of changed over the years?
I think balance, I feel like I'm an old guy now, but balance was really that was kind of the toughest thing to do early in my life. Working, I worked to a point where, it was just like, again, that competitive thing where you were kind of obsessed chasing that. I think what really helped me with that is when my kids got to an age where I was like, well, I want to be a parent. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be a parent. And so I made some real sacrifices in my professional life, to say, listen, I only have so much time and this is going to go quickly. One of the best educations I've ever had in my life is being the last of 6 kids. I got to see my brothers and sisters have kids, go through that. That taught me a lot. You know what I mean? Like, that you're never done parenting.
Yeah.
You're never done.
Yep.
You're never done. So I think the balance part, it hit me a little bit when I was really had my face in my work, probably too much. But then, when we had kids, you're busy, but then there was a point there where, kind of in my coaching career and definitely the last couple of years, that balance tipped where I knew I had guys that, we had opportunities, and I think the COVID situation taught us something about being appreciative of it. My balance probably tipped where I was getting a little unhealthy on the coaching side, side of things. You know what I mean? To be totally honest, but balance it's difficult to achieve. You know what I mean? It really is. It's difficult because you go through cycles, but I think in the end, when you sit down and you think about what's really important, my family is, there's nothing more important to me than my family. So I had to figure that out with my work life early. You know what I mean? And then, and I think that was it was a really tough decision, but that's a decision I'll never regret in my life. Absolutely.
No, definitely agree with that. I mean, that's one of the things that for growing up, for me, it was always, well, there's going to be sacrifices you make in one area or the other. It just depends on like where you want to make them in order to get where you want to go. And so for me, it was always like, it needs to be basketball. I'm going to sacrifice some time with friends and family so I can get everything I can out of basketball and pursuing to be the greatest player that I could be with like the potential that I was given. But then there's definitely a lot of relationships that I wish I would have realized I had a certain amount of weight to it and tried to maintain those a little bit more throughout the whole process. But I've been very blessed with family and friends that kind of understood the ambition I had with trying to pursue that. And so I think that also plays into the balance aspect of balance doesn't necessarily mean that everything's even.
Correct.
It's just you have to know what balance looks like for you so you can actively make sure you're staying balanced with those different aspects of life. Because like you said, family is one of the most important things, or hopefully it's one of the most important things in people's lives. And like, it's the people that you can bring with you on those kind of journeys of ambition that really make it worth it too.
Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong. I think when you have a passion for something, it could be your work, could be whatever stage of life you're in. I think it's important to dive into that,
100%.
And have people around you that know that is your, your ambition. Luckily with me, when, raising my kids kind of in sports, playing a lot of different sports, and I was able to be around coaching, in whatever aspect, if it was some youth coaching or doing whatever, coaching them in AU, it was kind of the family business. You know what I mean? That was our hobby. Yep. So we got a lot of time. We got a lot of family time being in hotels, on AU weekends. You know that, how valuable that is. But even day-to-day stuff, do your schoolwork and, maybe we get a little practice in or whatever it is. But I was really lucky to have one of my great passions. My kids shared into it. And my wife, she was a coach's daughter her whole life when she grew up. So father-in-law was a basketball coach forever. So she knew, the things that I had to do. So where I think that's really tough in the coaching business, especially when you're like a high school coach, you're really not getting paid anything. Yep. It might be hard for a spouse to be like, oh, I think the balance is a little off here. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're spending all this time doing this, but I was really lucky to have a unbelievably supportive family, and my parents and Heather's parents, like it just, my whole family supported that. So that made it a lot easier.
Love that. Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely makes it a lot easier where you can combine multiple different areas and they aren't mutually exclusive for sure. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, but when you got into coaching initially was right out of college, right out of high school, and then kind of took some time off and then got back into it. Was there a moment when you got back into it with the AAU that you knew you wanted to kind of make this a coaching career, or was it kind of just gradually over time?
It was just kind of gradual. I mean, it really was an accident. Like, I really enjoyed being around both my kids' like sets of friends, and we met so many cool parents along the way of his friends that you go through those experiences together. You know, one of them, Tim Allen, he was the director of football at Michigan State.
Okay.
Under Coach D'Antonio. And he was so good to us as a family. And, you know, we went to the Rose Bowl that year when we won. That was a bucket list item for me. But
that's sweet.
The access that he gave me to their program, whether it be, hey, Tom, this is what we do in the preseason. This is what we do in the offseason. Hey, Tom, come on the sidelines to watch a game. Hey, come in the locker room after. Like, you know, we just beat Michigan. I'm in the locker room, and they're going nuts. And that access, you know, I got to see firsthand kind of an elite staff like work, you know what I mean, during games, during that. Those moments tipped me to be like, I want to be better at this. You know what I mean? Like,
kind of seeing the standard of
it. Seeing the standard of it and what it meant to those other guys. And that was kind of like when Riley was, you know, that started like middle school age. So I just thought I was going to be an AU coach, but the whole high school thing was kind of an accident how I even became an assistant. So, but when I came back to the game, I had no aspirations of like being a high school coach or getting a coaching job. I was parenting. I thought, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, hey, they're going to be there. And I have parents asking me, hey, Tom, will you coach again? Or, you know, I'm like, yeah. I told Heather so many times, like, man, I just love watching my kids play. You know, like both Riley and Kenzie played for other coaches, and my favorite times are being in the stands and watching them play. Like, I love that more than anything. But the coaching thing I did have people approach me, and I'm like, you know, and Heather said, do it, Tom. Like, it'll be, you know, just do it. So I just kept going.
Nice.
Going, you know?
Absolutely. Just kind of taking advantage of the doors that have been opened because you were in that space and actually taking action and being kind of like the man in the arena. You're just there taking advantage of the opportunities you had because you were there, and you probably wouldn't have had if you hadn't got back into it.
Correct.
That's awesome.
You know, so it was kind of accidental. This whole thing, me being a high school coach, was really just kind of accidental.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. It is crazy.
That is wild. No, definitely can relate to you in terms of I didn't think I would get more joy watching someone else play basketball than I played basketball. But, I mean, with Parker, my younger brother, he's 8 years younger than me, and, like, I got a taste of that. It was not even my own kid, but, like, seeing my younger brother just kind of grow and develop and watching him play. Like, even when I moved down to Atlanta, like, thankfully they were able to live stream some of his games, and and like just watching him grow up and play those games is one of my favorite things to do, like, ever. And like work out. I was able to this week, since I'm back, able to go play basketball or work out with him like 4 times. Like, that's one of my favorite things to do. So definitely understand that.
No, I love being a fan. You know what I mean? I love
Absolutely.
being a fan, and I think why you love it, if you've played or you've been a part of the game, you appreciate what goes into it. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like,
probably more than the normal
you've been
observer.
behind the curtain and know what guys go through and everything like that. So
for sure.
That's my favorite.
That's awesome. My favorite. What's one of your favorite memories from coaching? Kind of going along the same vein.
You know, people always ask me, like, you know, I told you, you know, what are your favorite games or this or that, and some of my favorite memories of coaching were moments during games. It might even be when I look down at the bench and look at somebody. You know what I mean? Like, one of my all-time favorite moments of coaching was coaching Ben Miranda. Remember Ben?
Yeah, yep. Absolutely.
Okay. So Ben lost his dad, Riley's senior year, and it was Ben's junior year.
See, I didn't know that.
And before Coach Bauer died, Ben
Yeah.
lost his dad
Wow.
to cancer. And if you know the Miranda family, you know Ben. Ben is still to this day, you know, he comes out. I get to see Ben. He's one of my favorite guys. But he was a guy that didn't play a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
on a normal team, I don't want to say normal, but like a less talented team, he would have played. But we had guys, you know.
Yep.
There was a lot of guys that came through the program with me that if they're playing for a different high school, they're probably starting or doing it. That was hard, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for certain guys. Wasn't hard for Ben. I had coached him when he played Pee Wee football with Riley. He was an absolute dog. I mean, this kid would do anything. He would run through a wall. And so his senior year, his junior year, he loses his dad. And I can't remember if it was his junior or senior year. Ben could shoot it. Like he could just shoot it.
Yep.
And there was this one game where we were struggling, and I just got weird feelings. You know what I mean? I just get weird feelings as a coach. You have some intuition or whatever.
Yep.
And we just needed a spark or whatever. And sometimes I would make these decisions, and my assistants would look at me like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Ben, get in." He gets in there, hits a few threes against a zone, like changes the game.
Yeah.
It was, the guys are going nuts. Like, you know, he was so inspirational to me during our Breslin run his junior year, you know, being a selfless guy, and Riley's senior year. I've always rooted for him, and I've actually replicated kind of that story of having a feeling about a kid with other kids in subsequent years, where I'm like, I know you can shoot the hell out of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they were struggling a little bit. And it was really important to me to try to get kids like their moments. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
because they're practicing all the time. They're going through everything, and then they don't get to play. Like, I would get the most upset I got at some of my teams were when we had an opponent that we knew we could, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but
Just wreck.
we could beat them by what we needed to beat them by. And they'd go out there, kind of be laissez-faire. There were some half times and some post games where that's the time I peeled the paint the most in the locker room, because I'm like, these guys, you know, they do whatever they need to do in practice, do whatever. Tonight was a time where you could go out and blow the doors off somebody and give them a ton of time or whatever. And, you know, nobody from the outside knows those things. You know what I mean? Like how much it tears at me all the time having guys that, you know, maybe aren't playing or doing that. But so there were some of those moments. That's not my favorite when that happens, but the Ben Miranda, that I always think of that, like looking down the bench. And there were other kind of micro moments in my coaching that, you know, you have moments in your life that imprint in your brain a little bit that you can go back to.
Like core memories.
Yeah, it's crazy. And those are my favorite memories. Those are my favorite memories. The ride that I got to take with Riley was it was under unbelievable circumstances, but for us, you know, that's got to be I mean, that was a magical time. We could probably talk about that a little bit, but it's you know, that's got to be there too. That's an easy one to say. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's an easy one to say. But the Ben Miranda and those little moments, those are unbelievably special to me.
Absolutely. No, I love that. The little things that you don't see in any stat book, in any headline.
No.
Like, those are the ones that absolutely, like, will leave, like you said, imprint on your mind. Yeah, for sure.
Like Connor Perrell diving for a ball. Like, we're trying to win the district then, and hadn't won a district. He's like diving out of bounds, and he knows he's like got to get it over to Riley for a shot. Like, he's like selfless acts of the kid would do anything. Those little plays and those little moments, like, or a great screen set. Those things. This year, there's a screen I remember from Jackson Newman. Like, there's weird things that I remember that makes the difference between winning and losing.
Absolutely.
Of having these unbelievable special moments we've had in our program to not. So those are some of my favorite moments.
Absolutely. And like you said before, you see it because you've been in it. You know how important those little things have to happen in order for the big play and like the highlight to happen.
Absolutely.
No, I love that. I love that you said about Connor, because that's That's how I remember him by. He was one of my best friends, like when we were in high school, and that's the epitome of Counter Perel right there.
Yeah, it was, and I've been so lucky to have those types of guys that bought in, that they weren't going to have a lot of stats, but they would do anything.
Yeah.
And you have to have, I don't even call them role players, because it's like, I mean, we didn't, everybody's got responsibilities to some extent, but they just did the best that they could to help their team win. We talk about winning plays all the time, like winning plays. And you need those types of kids that'll just do anything possible to just win.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I love that. So, obviously, you have a very decorated coaching career. Got 7 years as the head coach of Williamston, plus a playoff run like we talked about before. Part of 10 straight conference championships, 5 district championships, 4 regional championships, and 2 Final Four appearances. And last but not least, the first championship in WHS program in 80 years, all accumulating to 126-17 record, which is incredible. So you obviously know how to coach, a little bit at least. What's been one of the differences that you've kind of had to find between pushing a player and kind of getting on them, and maybe not necessarily being like all sunshine and rainbows, but also finding that balance on the flip side to kind of encourage them to make sure that they take what you have kind of said what you need to say, but then also kind of lift them up enough to where they receive it?
Yeah, I mean, when coaching AU is different, because you're coaching like some of the best players like around the area or whatever, and that's kind of expected to try to like get the best out of them. So I was an assistant for Jason for the 2 years and change, before almost 3 years. That was really good for me to, we coached during practice, but I got to observe in games. Didn't say really anything in games, and just I was just an assistant, and I kind of got to sit back and view like, okay, what works and kind of what doesn't. But I mean, one of my favorite quotes is Popeye, "I am what I am." You know what I mean? I'm gonna coach you. You know what I mean? I'm gonna coach you. And you see all of these, kind of the era we're in where you can't do that you can't approach a player like that, or you can't. There's some of these boundaries. I didn't really believe in those boundaries, because my core belief was, if you can have a relationship with every player on your team, I don't care if you rank them 1 through 12 ability or anything like that. If you can have a relationship with 12 that's as good as your 1 or better, that you can coach them still.
For sure.
You can still push them. I think the best thing that you can do in a team aspect is, kids, especially high school kids, tough time. They have to realize kind of where they're at. You know what I mean? Like, they have to. It can't like blindside them. You know what I mean? Like, and it has to be talked about, and it has to be played out through practice and workouts and stuff. But if they realize that, and they don't have to stay there, they can improve. But if you're honest and you still value them, just like you value number 1, and you make number 1 value them just like anybody else. You don't have any.
They're going to see that and understand.
They're going to see that, and you're still going to have disappointment. Like, everybody wants to play. Basketball is the most brutal sport there is. There's 5 guys that get to play. You know what I mean? And a lot of guys play heavy minutes a lot. It's tough, but I tried to build a relationship with every player on my team as much as I possibly could. And some of my best, deepest relationships post basketball are with some of those guys that didn't play very much, but they keep in touch, and I love that. You know what I mean? I love that. That's probably my favorite thing, as far as coaching is. I think being a parent, you know what I mean? I think coaching in youth and kind of my journey upwards helped me with that, because I'm like, your kids go through disappointments, and you're like, you can kind of feel all that, so you got to kind of appreciate that. But at the end, so getting back to the question of approaching those kids, I felt like I could be I am what I am, and I'm going to coach you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to coach you, and I'm going to coach you. Here's my expectations. Here's our goals. I'm going to hold you to those goals.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm gonna be the first. I'm gonna be right in front. If there's a fight,
Yep.
I'm coming right over. I'm going past you to get to the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my players felt that.
Yeah.
That I was gonna fight for them.
Absolutely.
And I loved them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that was. So I think you can still coach. I think you can still coach with an edge and have really high expectations.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back to that trust factor, and you got to have equity into those guys.
Absolutely.
And I think it's the adult's job to do that first, and really, some guys aren't going to trust you.
Yeah.
Got to earn that trust, and they've got to earn your trust too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I love that. It's you're able to push them past their perceived limits to get to those goals because you had that foundation with them. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, is that you're never done parenting, you're never done coaching, because oftentimes when it feels like they're going to go off and not really listen to what you're saying, that's when they kind of need you the most.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
And it's at some point in coaching, you need guys to self-regulate your team too. You know what I mean?
For sure.
You need some leadership, and you need
sure.
to do that. But we always kind of operated in like, this is our unit. Like we always, the locker room, I'm like, it's us.
Mm-hmm.
It's us against everybody. I try to build that every game. I just that's how I lived, and my guys bought into that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They bought into that. I tried to create an enemy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And said, we're going out to slay that enemy right
Mm-hmm.
now. So, that was special, and I just it's always hard. It's always hard, but I think kids today, if you again build that relationship and you put enough effort in, they're going to see that and respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
then, and respond with their effort.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely agree with that. I mean, that's what I remember about you. Like, that was one of my favorite things about, like, his coach. Like, you're going to put in all the work. Like, there were so many times where you would open up the gym for us, like, late. And then there were so many times where you would come over. Well, then that kind of built that between us right away, because not a lot of people know, but I lived in Lansing. Once I came to Williamston, the drive's like 30 minutes. So instead of going back home between school and actual practice, you guys opened up your home to me, and I was able to come here and just either chill, do homework, do whatever. So you showed that to me right from the start, and we didn't even know each other yet. So that's, let alone for all the guys that actually you do have really good relationships. So I definitely appreciate you for that, and just the consistency.
And that was easy because you're a great kid, but like, just, you want to give kids opportunities. And I never wanted a kid to, I never wanted my players to ever think that they were being shortchanged by me.
Yeah.
So that's where an obsession with me, that I wanted them to be the most prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, I wanted to try to put everything in their hands. And then, but for the flip side, I could be a bit of a tyrant, because I would expect.
Because you had the expectations, because you were putting in your
You know what I mean? Like, you guys made these goals.
Mm-hmm.
We always did the note card.
Yep.
Three personal goals, 3 team goals, and the evolution of that was a real interesting thing in our program. Maybe we'll get to that, but when you have those goals and they say that, you're like, okay,
all right,
that's a Tom
you.
Izzo thing. I'm holding you to this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm putting it in my back pocket. They were always in my backpack. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was a key thing that I got from Izzo.
For sure. So you kind of talked about having an edge when you play and when you coach, and that was one of the first things that I remembered about, like, the practices with you, was in summer workouts and practices, you're like, all right, we're gonna get after it, and you guys need to have an edge if you're gonna beat the competition that we need to beat in order to get to those goals. So what does that having an edge mean to you? How have you kind of implemented that as a professional, as a coach?
I just think, you turn it into a competition and you don't want to lose. So I also think that, portraying to your opponent, like, I'm never going away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm never going away. And that was like, my kids, I was so proud of them, just how they competed. You know what I mean? Like that, like, man, there were some times I used to call, like, Kenzie the Terminator, like when she was a kid. She's playing against the boys, and like she's on like when the Terminator didn't have a lower torso and still crawling after
Yep.
something. Like
Yep.
when you see that type of effort and that's an edge to me. Like I'm not going away.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not going away.
For sure.
And I think I tried to use that edge and that chip on your shoulder to also instill some confidence. And some kids may not have a lot of confidence,
Mm-hmm.
but if you can build that and say, "This, we are doing this. Like we are gonna, it starts to build in them, and then they get empowered, and that's how you really get, I think, abnormal results.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So to me, right or wrong, it was an edge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was an edge, and I always told, we still do this to this day. I tell Heather, I said, I walk into a gym just because of, through AAU, maybe I've cut kids, or maybe I've, coached against kids or
Mm-hmm.
done this. I'm like, half the people in this gym like me and half probably don't like me very much. You know what I mean? But that goes back to that edge is like, that's just how we were walking into a gym.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's how I wanted my players to play. Like, this is never going to be over. Like we don't forget anything. And that's just how I kind of taught them to really be competitors, like every minute they were on the floor.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Because you often kind of hear those buzzwords sometimes of you need to have an edge, you need to work hard, but like, it's tough to sometimes see what that looks like on a daily basis. But like being able to verbalize that and show what it actually looks like, that makes it so much easier. Well, not necessarily easier, but like makes it able to be carried over to those next phases after you're out of something like sports where it's kind of naturally you know how to do it.
Yeah, I've never said this publicly, but like, there's coaches that talk about culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, culture is the big buzzword. Like the culture of your program and this, and culture there's definitely culture, but you can't say like this is going to be my culture and these are, you put a few things on the walls
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about it or you whatever. You have to live it.
Absolutely.
And breathe it.
Yep.
And be it.
Mm-hmm.
And I see some of these coaches like, okay, they, we're going to talk about grit. You know what I mean? You're gonna, and you're like, the guys looking at that guy are like, we get in a street fight.
It doesn't match up.
He's going to fold.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He would never fight for us.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like,
mm-hmm.
I've said that to my team sometimes in a timeout. I said, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but whatever. I'm like, if we were in a street fight right now, if we were in a street fight with these guys, what would we do to them?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, what could we do to them?
Mm-hmm.
And they look at me. Some of them are shocked. You know what I mean? Like,
like,
some of them
oh my
don't
God,
know
it's
me.
not a
Like,
basketball game
my
anymore.
gosh, we're talking about street fight. But I'm like, that when you have some of those moments and when you challenge the kids, and I'm not advocating fighting or you know what I mean? But I'm like, but when they see me advocate for them or with a referee maybe,
mm-hmm.
or we make with social media now. We'll see things about our opponents on social media.
Yep.
About, we're tough and we've got grit, or you
mm-hmm.
see these, we kind of laugh at it. Like, good luck with that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, good luck with that. Cause I don't care what we don't advertise this. We don't advertise anything about culture and all that. We just do what we do.
You know it.
We just do what we do.
Right.
So,
exactly.
That kind of makes me laugh sometimes. You have to have it, but you gotta live it and breathe it, and just, it's got to be part of part of the whole process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's part of the reason why Dan Campbell is so loved in Detroit right now, is because you see grit in all the words that he puts on and tries to instill in the identity, but then he's about it. Like, he's out there doing it. You look at him and like, you want to follow him into any sort of fight.
Absolutely. I got chills right now. Like, I love watching him, but he's authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's no BS with him.
Yep.
There's coaches, there's leaders that I just think you have to be, if you're authentic doing something, like, your players are going to follow you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or they're going to believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you can get it done or not, or it doesn't mean you're going to win or lose. But I'm just a big believer in, like, being authentic. And
for sure.
Some people don't like that, but I just think it's Dan Campbell. One of the greatest compliments. Somebody was like, "Hey, you remind me a lot of Dan Campbell.
I was just thinking that.
How are you?
Just thinking that.
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
how he's like, because he daps up his guys, but then he's kind of fiery, and that's a huge compliment. Like I hope the Lions can win. But
That'd be so awesome.
But he's an authentic guy.
Yep.
I just watched them. One of the hardest things in the world is to cut players. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was just on Hard Knocks.
Yep.
He was torn up about it.
Yeah.
Like you could see before it happened. You could see when it did happen. But every one of those guys, he just cut those guys, and they were all like, "Hey, you guys got something going. You know, I appreciate how you handled me and how you did this." Like for a man and a coach, like,
right? That's their livelihood.
That is the ultimate compliment.
Yeah.
Like a professional doing
for sure.
You know what I mean? Because cutting players is like the worst thing in the world.
Brutal.
So I think he's authentic, and those guys respect that. Grown men respect that. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? So that was pretty cool.
For sure. So success is something that is often talked about. I think if you ask anybody if they want to be successful, they're going to say yes, but it's not really defined in some areas. So like a first act as a basketball player, I knew what it was. You knew what it was. You go to the gym, you shoot, you work on your game, you go to lifts. But then after that kind of structure and defined success parameters, it's hard to define success sometimes and know what it looks like. So how have you been able to redefine success after kind of that initial first act, and how has that kind of changed over the years?
Yeah, I think it changes. I mean, like, it goes back to the whole balance thing. Like, you know, you've got to have the older I get, and like, I admire people so much like that get to do what they love and be quote unquote successful at it because it's really effortless. You know what I mean? Like, I think success, like a huge part of success is being happy. You know what I mean? And being present, having, you know, being able to manage stress levels and stuff. I think success, you know, there's monetary, there's awards, there's this and that, but I think being comfortable in your own skin is really a big part of success. I think, you know, feeling good, you know, Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if you follow Aaron Rodgers much or whatever, but he just, you know, he's on the ayahuasca thing and kind of finding new dimensions. But like they talk about like self-love and like, you know, having a good perception and all of that.
Yep.
I think success is being passionate, you know, doing the best that you can do. You know, obviously my whole thought of success is about like my family around me. Like my family unit is the most important thing to me in the world. But I think no matter if you have monetary goals or you have, you know, levels you want to reach to at work or in athletics, happiness has got to be part of that.
Yeah.
Like you gotta have some happiness in there, or something's gonna break.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's hard to sustain it if it's
not. It is. So I think success is really hard to measure. Like I didn't feel like a successful coach, like for a long time, and maybe until I won that last game. You know what I mean? Like as weird as that is, but I was dwelling on losses and doing that. But in my professional life, there were times where, you know, you'd be doing better, or you know, you're doing better than you were expected to or whatever, but it wasn't like I didn't feel successful.
Right.
I wasn't necessarily happy. So it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. But I think having a level of happiness has to be with success goes hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, love that. It's something that's not really talked about because, I mean, it is talked about a little bit, but it's tough to know until you're actually in it, is if you are achieving all those kind of monetary and all those achievements, and that's what's supposed to be successful. But if you're not feeling fulfilled and you're not having the happiness along with it, then it's really tough to feel successful, like you were saying. So I think it's really important to know what success looks like for you at a certain stage of life, so you're not just chasing after something but it feels like you're on a treadmill, and then once you hop off after all that effort, you're still in the same spot and not feeling any more happy or any more fulfilled. And I think that's kind of a step that gets skipped over, is kind of defining that initial level of success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you set out goals and stuff, but like, I think you have to be comfortable. I'll go back to like being comfortable in your own skin. When that's not true, it's really hard to be successful. You know what I mean? Because you might be doing things that they're not making you happy. They're, you know, it's an absolute grind. Mentally, you're just in a different spot. That makes life tough. You know
tough.
what I mean?
Absolutely.
So you got to find, it's tough to find your way. And throughout life, I'm, you know, there's roller coasters with that. You know, you're just not successful, and then like, oh, we're done now. Like there's tough times in every aspect of life. So you just got to kind of be resilient.
For sure. No, I love that. So as we kind of transition to the outro, just want to say it's been this conversation's been everything I wanted it to be. Like it's one of those conversations where it's already like an hour in, and it just feels like we just started like that.
No, I know.
So definitely appreciate you for that. But what's something you've learned from the transition periods of uncertainty as you've kind of gone from athlete to student to kind of coach, and then being a father, throwing that in there, and then back into coaching? A lot of transitions in life, and not a lot of some of those come with a lot of uncertainty. So kind of knowing what you know now, what's something that you wish you would have known potentially going into those kind of situations?
Man, that's a great question. Never really thought about that. Probably looking back, you know, parenting, coaching, business-wise, like sometimes when you're a little younger, that there's certain moments that seem like they're it's the be all end all.
Yep.
Like this is either going to happen or it's not. You know what I mean? And I think you know, if there was any way to, like, there's a spotlight here and like this is it, you know, you're going to have more moments like that. You're going to have more opportunities. So I think not putting too much pressure on yourself in certain, you know, especially when you're younger. There's a lot of ways to get to your destination.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everybody thinks they have this path. How, trust me, it's going to go a lot of different ways. You know what I mean? So those moments where you have forks that are either really good or really tough, you know, that's not the end of it. So you have to kind of appreciate those moments, try to learn from them, but don't put too much weight into them like it's you know, the end of something, or you're already, you know, you've already arrived at something, or, you know, just don't put too much weight into those, because you got to you're going to have to navigate a lot of different things, you know what I mean, throughout your life.
For sure.
So, looking back, I think when you're younger, you know, where you're at, you know, and where my kids are at, you know, Kenzie's going to graduate this year in college, and Riley's starting to, you know, in his young career. Man, there's so much ahead of them, you know, and then a ton of it's great, you know, there's going to be disappointments, and there's going to be that when either those great moments come and you try to replicate those. But when those setbacks come, you know, don't be too hard on yourself, and just kind of, you know, find a way to bounce back.
Absolutely. No, I love that. It's easy. It's hard when you're kind of younger because you're so close to the picture.
Yeah.
But then when you're able to kind of take a step back and realize there's a lot more, like you said, coming along. But it's easier to see that since you've kind of gone through it already. No, that's some good wisdom right there.
Yeah, because I just think, like, you know, sometimes life can, I don't want to say, you know, when things are going well and you're like, oh, it's great, like, you have setbacks, and you got to find a way to refocus. I've been guilty of that, you know, like if I have a setback, sometimes it's hard for me to restart that manifest engine and get back on track. I dwell too much. That's definitely a fault of mine. You know what I mean? So I've got to be better at that. But looking back, that would be my advice. You know what I mean?
Love that. Absolutely. For sure. Yeah, that's something that I feel like a lot of people could use and hear. Yeah. Even if they don't realize it. But
and it's even tough when you know it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You still have to restart or do whatever. So
for sure.
Just being aware of it is the first step.
Most definitely. So before I ask the final two questions, just want to take a minute to recognize you and acknowledge you for both the basically being my Williamston family kind of coming into it, because there was a lot of uncertainty for me. That was another kind of transition phase for sure.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You guys helped make that really smooth. But also, like I mentioned before, all the times that you would go open up the gym, and when it was outside of normal hours, and just pushing me as a player and as a person to get to the next level. I always appreciated that. But then also for the impact you've made on me, and then the pretty much uncountable reach you've had on so many other players in this community in general. Because, like, I remember one quick story. my summer before senior year out in Vegas, the Super 64 tournament, and then I'd played because like that final summer before senior year, for me that was like recruiting wise, trying to get to a college, and wasn't super heavily recruited at all, and I put so much pressure on myself every single one of those tournaments. And I remember you were there for one of the games, and I didn't play nearly as well as I wanted to, and I knew there was a lot of coaches in that gym, and it got to me
I remember
a
that
lot.
moment.
I remember coming out of the gym, we're in the parking lot, and you were there for me, and you're like, hey, everything's gonna be all right. We're gonna get back to Williamston. We're gonna get back in the gym, and we're gonna get to work, and it's all gonna work out, and it did. So I definitely appreciate you for times like that, and I know there's so many other players have moments like that with you, so definitely want to recognize you for that.
Well, that moment is like one of those moments when you're young where you put so much into it. You know what I mean? You can't see like the forest through the trees.
Exactly.
What I could see with you, Keats, is you are one of the like best human beings I've ever met in my life. You know what I mean? Like,
I appreciate that.
You have a light about you. You always did. As soon as I met you and looked me in my eyes, and I mean, you were just whether you're at the house in between practices or what, you've just been an absolute joy, and you've been a huge additive to me. My favorite books is the I don't know, it's like the bucket filler and the bucket dipper. That's well, I don't know what the actual name of the book is, but we talk about that all the time as a family. Like, are you filling someone's bucket or are you dipping out of somebody's bucket?
Yeah.
Like, and we talk about that with people around us.
Mm-hmm.
You are a bucket filler, my man.
I appreciate that.
And I can tell that with all the people around you. So
thank you for that.
Yeah, it's easy. So that's I remember that moment. Thought it was the end of the world, didn't you?
I felt like it.
and look at you now.
Look where we are now. I know.
Look where we are now.
Crazy how that happens.
Yeah, that's because you're a great human.
I appreciate that, Coach.
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
Appreciate you. So now, some of the last two questions I ask all my guests. First one is, what does a life well lived mean to you? I mean, I just turned 50 a couple days ago. So it's supposed to be a big thing. That's right.
You know, it's supposed to be a big thing, turn 50. I've never let age really define me or whatever. You can ask my players with the music I listen to and some things. But a life well lived to me is just, you know, how I've been around with my family. You know what I mean? Like, my family was really close. My parents, you know, I still live 9 miles away from them, which is really important to me. And being around them when I was a kid, and my cousins, and, you know, growing up, I got another family with Heather's parents and her brother and all that. Like, a life well lived to me is doing everything I can do first for my family. You know what I mean? But then people around me, you know, just trying to be an additive, you know what I mean, to people. I have a great time with my friends. I have great friends that surround me and support me. And I just think, you know, with my perception as a coach and kind of how I am sometimes, maybe is, you know, good and bad, I guess. But my thing is, I just want to be a good human. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and I want to be able to especially teach my kids and like all the kids I coach, you know, that I still, like I said, the kids I coached when I was a freshman in college, if I could add anything to their lives or help them in any way, to me, at the end, I've had so many awesome life experiences, the state championship being incredible, but my family was all there. Yeah. My family was all a part of it.
Yeah. That was special.
You know what I mean? Like, everyone was a part of it. I figured that all their DNA is into that trophy. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
It's all my former players' DNA. Your DNA is in that trophy. You know that.
Yeah.
So I think a life well lived, I'm you know, kind of talking in circles, but
no, it's good.
I just think, you know, trying to be a good human being, trying to, you know, continue to raise my kids, you know, the right way. My wife is awesome. You know, we've been married, you know, 29 years now, and you know, love her and all that. But it's just, I think leaving no regrets of how, you know, of wanting to do anything that you want to do.
For sure.
and I don't want to say I'm there, because I'm still going to be a parent. I'm still going to be a son and a brother and an uncle and all that good stuff. But I think being a good human and trying to leave your path in this life better than you found it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Love that. Well, in my experience and a lot of other people I know, you're well on your way to being able to say you've done that. But
I don't know. You have different opinions about that.
So now the last questions. It's different from the first 9 guests I've asked. It's new. It's a new one I'm kind of rolling out.
Yeah.
So the question is, how will you make sure the best is yet to come? And so to kind of give some context to that, you hear in college, like, oh, it's the best 4 years of your life, or sports are the best however many years of your life. But then as I graduated college, I kind of thought about it a little bit more, and I'm like, if we just live the best years of our lives, that's really depressing, because everything's downhill from here. Yeah. So to me, that was a disservice, having that mindset to all the people that had poured into you up to that point to get you there, and to say, okay, well, now everything's not going to be as good as it was. Like, that to me was just very disrespectful to the people that you were around and poured into you. And it just didn't seem like a really good way to live and a mindset to have as you went forward to the majority of your life. So what are some ways, or what's a way that you're going to try to make sure the best is still yet to come?
I've been really fortunate to have a lot of cool moments. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that people would, be able to travel cool spots, play the old course in Scotland, go to sporting events, do all that. My kids, my family. I think to answer that is, I just need to be in a position. I had 2 great role models of parents, with Heather's parents and my parents. You know what I mean? Like, how they continued to parent, and they've both been like selfless in their later years, like, that I've noticed. They had grandkids and all that, like, unbelievable selfless, Yeah. And it was all about their kids and their family and that. I need to put myself in that position where I've been selfish sometimes, being obsessed with things that I want to do.
Naturally. That happens to the best of us.
Yeah. And I want to be selfless towards my family as much as possible. Yeah. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And just support them like I was supported and all of that. So I think that's my answer, and to be a great husband and support my wife, and just go back to be a bucket filler rather than a bucket dipper. And I think inherently I see my parents and my in-laws, like, have gain rewards from that, of doing that. And I think I kind of owe it to them to do that as well. You know what I mean?
For sure. No, I love that answer.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. It's a lot of good wisdom there. But
yeah,
Coach, I appreciate you. This has been amazing.
Awesome.
I could sit here for hours.
I know. It's great.
If you're listening now, just rewatch the whole thing. Re-listen to the whole thing. There's so much. I'm gonna be clipping everything up to put on YouTube and social media, because there's so many good things of knowledge in there that you can apply in any stage of life. But if you haven't subscribed already, YouTube, all the socials, get on there so you don't miss anything. Coach, is there any other causes that, I know you're not on socials much, but is there any other causes that you kind of want to plug?
Yeah, I'm not a big social. So actually, my players, we're on Snapchat. That keeps us.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That keeps us together.
That's true.
I love to see that. But no, I just you're doing a great job, and I can't wait to see where you go. But I love your podcast, and keep it going.
Appreciate that, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is Keaton Hall here with Coach Tom Lewis. Let's make sure the best is still yet to come.